Hello everyone, this is Austin Reville with 2FC Tactical, coming from our new podcast room, located right here in New Prague, Minnesota, at our new indoor range and store here at 2FC Tactical. The reason for our long pause between videos is because of that. I do apologize. We're going to get much better at pumping the videos out again now that things are getting settled in. We'll also fill out these walls with the historical items that you typically see. But this is where we're going to be filming from here on out, and we have some exciting new things coming to you, including some podcasts, as well as updates, reviews on silencers, on specific guns. So do take a look at our channel, as we're going to branch out into more different types of videos, as just the From the Vault is what we've been focusing on for so long. But don't worry, we have lots of historical guns that we're going to get to. We're going to continue the From the Vault series. And today we do have a very special kind of welcome back offering for you today, and that is the Mark I Model B MBA Associates Gyrojet pistol. It's a rocket-propelled pistol from the 1960s. Now, this was designed by Robert Mainhardt and Art Biehl in the early 1960s, full production by the late 1960s, 1968-ish. There were some variations of this pistol. This is or I shouldn't say the pistol, of this design. There was a carbine model that was put into production. There was a light machine gun proposed that was never made. And then there was a quote-unquote assault rifle style gun that was briefly tested by the U.S. Army, and it had issues and was not adopted. Now, when we get into this pistol, it's very different than anything that really precedes it and honestly comes after it. This is extremely light. There's almost no weight to this thing. And the reason why is there's really very little that makes this thing function. And there's a reason for that. It's because it's a rocket-propelled pistol. It fires a 13mm projectile. This is one of them right here. Now, if you look very closely, you can see it's all one unit. And there's 4 holes there on the back that surround the primer. There's a reason for that. Because unlike your typical cartridge, where you have the cartridge itself, then the projectile and powder in between, the cartridge stays and then is ejected upon release of the projectile, and the projectile moves out of the cartridge, expanding from those gases, and leaves your firearm. This is all one unit. The powder propellant burns inside the projectile, ejecting out of these 4 ports, causing the momentum to go forward and shoot the entire projectile out of the muzzle. It is a very interesting and radical idea. And we've seen movies take Aliens, the James Cameron follow-up to the movie Alien, where they talk about cartridgeless ammunition. Of course, the G11, there are some attempts at this throughout the years. To make this caseless ammo where it's just all one unit. This is kind of a different way to do it. This is the idea that the MBA came up with. And you kind of got to put yourself into the 1960s and what's going on. Why did they go this route? Why is it a rocket-propelled pistol? The 1960s are defined by the United States and the Soviet space race. You know, Sputnik goes up. We follow with the Mercury program, and then, of course, it culminates with the Saturn program and Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. So rockets are everywhere. This is the sole focus of the world, as on the space race, and you can make an argument that this is the space race brought into gun form. That's what they were going for. Now, these pistols were kind of expensive for the era. It was $300 in 1968, which is a considerable amount. That sounds like not a lot in today's money, but when you think of 1968 and the average salaries of $20,000 a year was being a really good salary and you could live off of, this is a significant chunk of that money, and that did kind of go into the fact that these things really didn't sell that well. And there's other reasons for that. They were tested in Vietnam with little or unknown success. And some of that is the projectile itself. When we talk about, the way this operates. So, very simple weapon platform, right? You put it on safe, you pull down on the slide lock, if you want to call that, right here, and you open the slide, and you would load your ammo into a fixed magazine just kind of individually. You do have an assist here, a magazine loader assist right here, and you would load it from the top down. So there's not a detachable magazine or anything that would make the reloading of this relatively quick. There is of course, a striker built into this, and that's when you fire it, that's what hits the back of your primer that sets the projectile off. But there's also another piece in here that you need in order to make this work, and that is this stopping plate that is right at the top of your chamber, and is there to allow the round to build up speed and push it out of the way to release the cartridge into the barrel and move on. So you got to think of this as a rocket, right? When you see a rocket launch, say SpaceX, or if you go back and watch the Saturn V or even the space shuttle, there's actually bolts on the whole launch system itself. They are explosive bolts. They hold the whole unit in place while it gets a burn. Now this seems imperceptible in terms of you and me. It's seconds sometimes. It's not very long, but it keeps the rocket anchored to the ground until it has enough force that those explosive bolts explode and release it to propel the whole unit up into space. Similar concept in a gun form. It's designed to hold it under spring tension, allow it to build up enough speed to push it out of the way to give the projectile enough speed to come out the barrel lethally, because that is the ultimate goal of a firearm, correct? And in order to help bleed off gases while this is happening, you have all these ports in here. So yeah, there is fire that is technically shooting out the side of these ports. Now, I have not personally fired one of these, but you can see them fired online. It's not in the sense that it would make this uncomfortable. You get a little whiff of heat, which you can sometimes get out of a regular firearm as the ejection port. It's nothing major, but that is why those holes are there. But again, they kind of just took a rocket, turned it sideways, and put it inside a gun. That is the idea. So that's why you're going to see some of these interesting design ideas. Now, when it comes to the practicality of this, unfortunately, you do need some distance for this particular projectile to build up speed to make it lethal. I'm not saying you should try this, so full disclosure, but in theory, you could put your hand at the end of the barrel and it may not have enough speed to actually pierce the skin when you fire it. Again, do not try that. That is not what I'm saying, that you should go home and try that and pick one of these things up. But this is where some of the issues came into play, especially when it comes to the military. You're going to need some distance in order to make this work. Now, when it comes to the pistol itself, I mean, it's pretty ergonomical. There's actually not a lot here. It's a light striker and I'm going to call it a holding plate that is pushed out of the way, and a barrel, and that's it. I mean, it's extremely light, held together by just a few screws. In some ways, when you pick it up, it almost feels like a toy. And when it comes to the carbine model, again, they had a longer barrel, so it had a little bit more time to build up that speed, but not really something that was super duper effective. Now, when it came to its testing in Vietnam, there was some small numbers that were tested over there. There's no real reports on that in terms of how it functions. Vietnam was a very messy war. A lot of guns and stuff were tested to see what worked, you know, the MAC-10s and all that. There was a whole bunch of stuff just thrown out there. So can't really speak to how it worked in the field. Now, given that this is this is something that kind of needs some distance to build up speed, and Vietnam was a very close-ranged war just because of the jungles and everything. This is not really suited for that kind of warfare, more distance warfare. Would we ever see something like this again? Probably not. You know, this is not something that the firearm industry has ever even seriously considered. I don't think that there's really a market for rocket-propelled handguns. It'd be interesting for someone to try an updated version of this to see if they could get it to work. I think there would be some. I do wonder what the ATF on the regulatory side would do with something like this. Would it be reclassified as like a destructive device, for instance, just based on the function of it and all that? There's some real open-ended questions to that. You know, 1960s, the ATF didn't exist. They do now. it would be an interesting thought exercise in how this would work. I feel like if anything like this was ever made in the modern age, there would for sure be some classifications uh, thrown on it. Now, the projectile itself was non-explosive, so this is just a bullet at the end of the day. So it would function, it would enter into its target just like a bullet, a regular projectile would. That's not to say that these were explosive tips or anything like that. That's not how that works. Though you could see maybe a futuristic use for something like that. It'd be a smaller, semi-explosive projectile. But again, doesn't really seem to be any plans on that. We do have some exciting new stuff coming up for you. And again, cannot wait to show all the stuff that we're working on. And we will continue to do that here shortly. But until next time, please like, comment, and subscribe. I tried to get to all the comments. Let me know you like the videos. And when we get into some of the reviews, we're pretty excited to show off some of the new stuff coming out or that has just come out and what we think. Now, as always, it's our opinion. Take it for what it's worth. Everyone likes different things, and that is completely fine. But I do look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one.